Mercury, our cosmic messenger, is moving into the sign of Pisces this week, where, later this month, it will go retrograde. Hi friends, it's Emily with Emily T. Astrology, and I am your host for Hermes Speaks, your weekly astro check-in, where we explore the current quality of time, as well as bring in some added mercurial insights through the written word and bibliomancy. This week, as I said, Mercury moves into Pisces, where it will go retrograde. But right before it moves into this sign, it will form a square to Uranus in Taurus. Uranus is stationary at the time, having just stationed to move direct for the final time in the sign of Taurus, moving into the last few months of its sojourn through the sign of the bull that began way back in 2018. This is beginning a storyline that will be playing out through mid to even late April. Let's look at the particulars. On the 3rd of February, Uranus will have stationed to move direct at 27 degrees of Taurus. By Thursday, the 5th, Mercury will form that square from 27 degrees of Aquarius to Uranus at 27 degrees of Taurus. And then the very next day on Friday, Mercury moves into Pisces. Mercury will be in Pisces for quite some time because of that retrograde. And by the 11th of February, Mercury enters its retrograde shadow at 8 degrees of Pisces. This is the degree that Mercury will retrograde back to during its 3-week long trip backwards through the zodiac. On the 25th, Mercury stations retrograde at 22 degrees of Pisces. By the 20th of March, Mercury will station direct at 8 degrees of Pisces. On the 9th of April, Mercury will exit its retrograde shadow. It will pass that 22 degree of Pisces point, never to return until next year to those degrees of Pisces. And then by the 14th of April, Mercury will move into Aries. But before it does, right before, on the very same day, on April 14th, Mercury will form a sextile to Uranus in Taurus. And then later that day, Mercury moves into Aries. And just a few days later, on April 25th, Uranus moves into Taurus for good and to stay for the next 7 years. This is a 2.5-3 month storyline that we're talking about. Let's back up a little bit here. Mercury is the planet of our minds, the way we think and process information, how we communicate. It is the messenger god, Hermes Mercury. It speaks to the written word, hence the title of this show, Hermes Speaks. Mercury in the sign of Pisces is said to be in exile or detriment. It is as far away as it can get from its home sign of Virgo. And in Pisces, not only is it in exile, it is also a little depressed because it is opposite its sign of exaltation. So Mercury in Pisces is a little bit hampered in its ability to think, process information, communicate already. When we add in a retrograde in this sign, we need to think about all of those words. Rethink, reassess, remember. All of these words are what retrogrades are all about. It's time to go back, to rethink, to look at something maybe from a different perspective. And here we have this Mercury that is in a sign where it already is feeling a little uncomfortable. Why? Partially because Pisces is a sign that isn't about linear thoughts and details as much as it is about image, as it is about mood and ambiance. It's a water sign, which traditionally the water signs were said to be mute. They're not about speaking and words. They're about feeling and processing. So Mercury, the planet of our mind and communication, going retrograde in a place where it is not super comfortable. It has to work a little harder to do its normal thing. We are really in for a period of time of retrospection, really taking some time to think, reflect, absorb, and it feels very muddy. It feels like there could be a lack of clarity in terms of logic, in terms of rationale, in terms of any kind of linear forward-moving progress. It feels like we are really in for a few week period of time that might be, muddy, might be confusing. There might not be a lot of clarity, but I think that we are actually going to be receiving a bit of a boon here. This might be a balm because what's going on out there in the world? Way more than most of us can emotionally process. Like, I will just say that right now. I mean, there's been a lot of deep breaths happening over here for me. And, we've got Neptune having just moved into Aries. We have Saturn, which will move into Aries all at the same time period as well on the 13th of February. They will be conjoining at the first degree of Aries on February 20th. We have eclipse season during this period of time. We've got the first Aquarius eclipse on the 17th of February, and then we have an eclipse on the 3rd of March in Virgo that is being ruled by this retrograde Mercury in Pisces. There is so much going on. We've got Uranus having just stationed direct. So we might actually find that this pause button, this slow down button, these 3 weeks of let's slow down, let's reassess, let's try to process, let's do it in a way that feels imaginal. And I mean image based, that's sound based, that's memory based, that's reflecting all of these ways of reassessing and reprocessing. We might find that this muddy lack of clarity, feeling-based, mute Mercury retrograde in Pisces is actually incredibly helpful, given all of the impactful, loud, forward-moving, dynamic astrology and world events that are taking place. We are living through a period of time that is incredibly difficult to be processing in real time, right? I don't know many people's nervous systems are capable of that. So this opportunity might actually be a blessing in disguise for us. It might force us to slow down, to rethink, reassess, reflect, remember. So if we're isolating Mercury retrograde in Pisces, that's what this feels like. Now, I want to point out this larger story arc that is involving Uranus. Uranus stations direct. A couple of days later, Mercury in Aquarius will square that Uranus that is still stationary, still not moving quickly at all. And then the very next day after that, Mercury dives into Pisces. And this feels to me like the square between Mercury and Uranus is like something shocking, something uncomfortable. We're sudden awareness. It's destabilizing. And I'm really getting this image that it's like you're on a ship. You're on a ship that's going down. It's a storm. It's night. The ship is sinking and there's lightning. And Mercury square to Uranus feels like there's a bolt of lightning and you see something that's shocking or destabilizing. Like you could be seeing a fellow passenger reaching out to go to the aid of someone else, like to be helping them into the lifeboat. Or it could be that you're seeing them reach out because they're about to throttle that person and push them aside to take their place in the lifeboat. But you can't see. It's just this flash, right? That's the Mercury square Uranus is a flash of insight. The lightning strikes and you can see something, or like the strobe light on a dance floor. You can see something for a second and you're not sure what it is. It's not clear what it is because it's just this flash of visibility that you see. And then before you know it, in the next second, you're plunged into the water. Then you don't have time to wait and actually figure out what it was that you just saw. You're plunged into the water, and that's Mercury entering Pisces the very next day, right? Plunging into the water. out of the air sign of Aquarius into the water sign of Pisces. And I'm thinking that this storyline then is ushered in with this shocking insight, with this lightning bolt piece of information that we don't have time to process and figure out before we go into that water. It's like when you are at a pool party and you're out and you're walking around the pool and you're hearing people talking, you hear the music playing, you hear the conversations, and it's clear, right? And then you dive into the pool and it's like, you don't hear the music in the same way. Sound waves move at different rates in water. It's muffled. As soon as Mercury moves into Pisces after this shocking lightning bolt piece of information, the fellow passenger is either coming to the aid or throttling another passenger. We don't know. We can't see. This is what it feels like is happening to me. And then we move through Pisces. Mercury does. We move through and it's like you're replaying. Have you ever had this happen where someone said something to you and you couldn't quite hear it? It was muffled or they were in another room, and you replay it in your mind. You replay what it was they said, and you can kind of piece together. You can pick out pieces of it, certain words, and you can kind of fill out the context. And through the replaying of something, you can be like, I think that's what it was that they said. You can deduce what it was that they said, even though you didn't hear it quite correctly the first time. That's what this whole process of the Mercury retrograde in Pisces feels like to me. It's replaying the tape of that vision, of the lightning bolt awareness, the lightning bolt shock that we are receiving with that Mercury square to Uranus right before being plunged into the water. And then you're coming up and you're getting air and you're grabbing the side of the lifeboat, and then maybe you go down again, and we do eventually get into the lifeboat. We are rescued, right, in this storyline that I'm creating. No one is dying, okay? Let's just say that in this storyline here. But there's this process with Mercury retrograde in Pisces where we're having to rethink, replay the image. We're having to piece it together. And then Mercury has gone through its retrograde, it's stationed direct, it's moved forward again, it exits its shadow, more aware. Now we're in the lifeboat, we're being rescued, right? We are moving forward. We have this wisdom that's been cultivated through image, through memory, through reassessment, through looking at different perspectives. And then Mercury is in a cooperative sextile relationship with Uranus, where it says, hey, Uranus, you're about to enter into Gemini for the next 7 years. You're about to start this whole new story in Gemini. And oh my God, I don't even want to talk about Uranus and Gemini. Then Mercury hands off this processed wisdom that it has accumulated through its reassessment, and it hands off in this cooperative sextile relationship to Uranus. It says, here you go. Here's a little bit of support and wisdom that you can take with you as you move into this new storyline that's taking place. This is what this whole story feels like to me, which again, I think is going to be a real boon. It might be really helpful given all of the other stuff that's going on. Okay, so we've reached the part in the show where I bring in those mercurial messages, where we listen to Hermes speak through the written word. And if you're not familiar with bibliomancy, it is a divinatory art, just like the tarot or the I Ching, where you meditate on a concept or a question, and then you open a book at random and read what's in the book. And that is the oracle speaking to you and adding something to your question or meditation concept. I gotta say, first and foremost, I have not read this book from which I pulled this week. It's just one on my shelf, and it caught my eye. The title seemed to speak to me. It is The World is What It Is, the authorized biography of V.S. Naipaul by Patrick French. And I opened the book and read a couple of pages in this book, and this is a biography. And at the pages that I read, there were several quotes from letters or from journal entries that, without the context of having read the book, I don't know what any of that means. What really I decided to do feels very much like this Mercury retrograde in Pisces, where you're taking little glimmers, the hints, the images, the pieces of replayed tape that are speaking, that are jumping out and glimmering out at you. And so that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to read 3, 4, 5 sentences that jumped out at me. It's like popcorn style. So first of all, I opened to a page, chapter 10, Back to the New World is the title of the chapter from which I read. I'll read these sentences, these little glimmers. The journey aboard the 7,000-ton cargo ship sailing on one of its last voyages before being scrapped would take nearly 3 weeks. At the end of August, Pat and Vidya took the train to Avonmouth on the edge of Bristol, the city where ships had been fitted in the 18th century for the Atlantic slave trade. I know that I must come back. I want that more than anything else. These people sitting around me at dinner, and here, as I write in the old-fashioned cozy lounge with chairs and upholstered in flowered covers, these people are precisely the people I fled from, the people who make life in any colony hell. An emptiness and a horrible egocentricity, a callousness, all these irritations come out from them. And lastly, the other passengers were familiar and unfamiliar, part of the West Indian world that Vidya had escaped and was now recovering. Okay, first of all, I promise you, I was already thinking of the ship analogy prior to opening this book. I swear. And I opened to a page where he's talking about boarding a ship. The journey aboard the 7,000-ton cargo ship sailing on one of its last voyages before being scrapped. Okay, so there's that piece. We took the train to Avonmouth on the edge of Bristol, the city where ships had been fitted in the 18th century for the Atlantic slave trade. I know I must come back. I want that more than anything else. These people are precisely the people I fled from. The other passengers were familiar and unfamiliar, part of the West Indian world that Vidya had escaped and was now recovering. And even the title, Back to the New World. Okay, so there's something of time, of history, of something dying. So it's this blurring of lines between the old and the new. Even taking it's a 3-week I just realized that now as I'm saying this. It's a 3-week trip. Mercury goes retrograde for 3 weeks, okay? This is like, you can't make this stuff up. Synchronicities actually happen here. But the ship, it's taking one of its last voyages before it's going to be scrapped. And it's leaving from a port that was an old vestige of slavery where the slave trade used to take place. He's amongst people from which he, were the same type of people which he fled. But he's now returning back to, and yet there is I want to go back. I do know I want to go back. There's this blurring of lines between history, between the forward motion and the backward motion, between old, archaic, dying, between memory, between reminiscing, between a past that it's like we have to acknowledge the world that we are leaving. There's a desire to go back to it. There's a desire to go forward. There are images that are reminiscent of things that we have fled, but there's a returning. It's this real blurring of lines between the past, the present, the moving into the future. And I think what it's saying here is that we are. Okay, there's no denying that we are entering some brave new worlds, right? The chapter of this work is back to the new world. We are entering some brave new worlds. Our world is changing. And we are bearing witness to the dying of some old structures. Whatever those are, in whatever way you look at things, there is a sense of romanticizing maybe the past and then also recognizing it for its atrocities, its callowness, right? That's in here. The egocentrism, the callowness of the people from which he had fled, and he's surrounded by them again. I keep thinking of, I used to be a dancer, and sometimes we would have to, and athletes will know this too, many different kinds of athletes. The fascia, your IT band on the outside of your thighs would get kind of like crinky, like stuck to your muscle and you'd have to roll it out. You'd have to roll it out on a roller and it was painful. I feel like we're in this process of the fascia. The IT band needs to be rolled out. And we need to experience this. We need to sit within the dying of the old. We need to be able to process it. We need to process it with memory. We need to feel and reminisce and also recognize with honesty. And I think that Mercury retrograde here in this sign, we have to sit. We have to take the time to go on the 3-week voyage, to sit within the ship that is going to be scrapped soon because it's run its course. We need to be in the process of being in the waters, roiling, thinking, remembering. We need to have this time because, come April, come Uranus entering Gemini on April 25th. It's like there's no going back. There's no going back. There's no going back. We are going forward. We are going forward. And so that is why I say that this Mercury retrograde in Pisces feels like a gift. It really does. Even if it feels muddy, like there's not clarity, we need this opportunity to take one last voyage. Right? To take one last voyage, leaving from the old port on the ship that's going to be scrapped. We need to sit with that, to reminisce, to remember, to recognize, to reflect, and to make our peace, hopefully, before we are in, the brave new world. The brave new world that's coming whether we like it or not. I hope you got something out of this today. If you like my style, come see me. If you have been wanting to have a reading with an astrologer, I am your gal. It is how I feel most aligned is when I'm meeting with clients. And, there's a lot of there's a lot of astrology and a lot of life happening right now. And if you're wanting some support, I'm here to help support you. If you enjoyed this, please like it, subscribe it, click that notification bell. It helps me and it helps the channel. And I just love to know your thoughts. How are you receiving this? What's going on with you out there? So drop a comment, let me know. I hope that you have a beautiful week ahead. And we're in this together, guys. We've got this. We've got this. I'll see you next week.